Well, kind of predictably, I'm becoming a bit more retrospective in recent days and weeks about 40 years of ordained ministry, but actually 52 years of public ministry in my lay capacities too. So it's a long, long haul. And it's really kind of sobering to have, as a reading from James today, about where it says, not many of you should become teachers because you will be judged with greater strictness, which is exactly what I did, you know. Yet there's sort of a soberness about that. And so it's allowed me to think, too, about of taking on that particular task of being a teacher-preacher. It really is an awesome thing, you know, and even today, after 52 years of doing this, I still get a little nervous on Sunday mornings and get up early and working and thinking it through. So I take it seriously. But the thing is that I've had this driving desire to communicate the good news. Now, have I done that perfectly? And that's, you know, no, I have not done that perfectly. Have I always intended to do it well and do it to the best of my ability? Absolutely. And I can say with confidence that it has not been self-promotion or personal benefit that's been behind my teaching and preaching, but a real desire for people to know and embrace and be transformed by the good news of Jesus Christ. So I've taken this responsibility seriously. But, you know, the thing is, and we see in our reading today about the seriousness of the words that we say, that we put out there, and, you know, about not making mistakes regarding that. Well, you know, I calculated based on 750 words per 5-minute speech, which is what I found we do, that I have publicly, in preaching and teaching alone, put out over 15 million words during my career. So you wonder about how, you know, man, you can make a mistake. You know, you think about people that are in politics or any kind of leadership, you know, and the clergy certainly is among those. You get a lot of words out there. And I've in this retrospective, I've sort of thinking about, what have I really fouled up bad in all of these words? And I don't know if I'm just blocking it or not, but I can't think of many. I may be blocking it, actually. I recently, because of the tragic death of my assistant when I was in Nashville a few weeks ago. I've heard from a lot of people from Nashville concerned about all that. And anyway, one of them was saying, you remember the first Sunday at St. Bartholomew's, Nashville, and what I said to you when you were greeting people after the service? And I said, no, I don't have any idea what I said. He said, well, I was congratulating you on a very good sermon. And you said to me, that's fantastic, but I wish the lady who came by just before you had the same view. She said it was the worst sermon she'd ever heard. So, but you know, and I don't remember that. I remember nothing about that. And that may be good or it could be bad that I don't remember that. Maybe it's good in this sense. That where we want to go with understanding this today is that spiritual maturity makes all the difference in how we go through this world. I mean, all the difference. And it's the aim of the Christian life, is to come into that kind of maturity. And anyone that would actually say something like that in a public setting, actually is not very mature. And therefore, we don't really need to take that into the very core of our being. I will tell you the one thing that bothered me the most in terms of somebody challenging something that I said. And it's really pretty insignificant. When I was also in Nashville, there was a woman who came after the sermon one day and she said, you used the word irregardless in your sermon. And that is not a word in the English language. And I got so bothered by this, you know. I mean, it was, so I'm looking this up and I found that actually in speech you can use irregardless, and it's actually in the dictionary, even though it's not a preferred word. It's a double negative, isn't it? So, but it was just, you know, I'm not preaching from a text. It's coming out, so it comes out as you. So, you know, if that's the most serious mistake that I've made, well, okay, right? But this text from James is really quite profound, and it really is consistent with a lot of the New Testament in terms of paying attention to what we say, what comes out of us, and how that impacts other people. So in James, he kind of goes from talking about teachers to talking more generally about all of us in terms of how we use our language and our speech. So just to summarize some of the highlights, he says things like this, that we use bridles for horses and rudders for ships, and they manipulate, these tiny things manipulate big things. So too, the tongue, being a small member of our body, yet has tremendous power, both for evil and for good. It says that the tongue can rule us. The tongue is a fire, meaning it can burn everything down. It's full of poison, which means it can kill us and kill others. It can be used to bless or to curse. And I think the most pointed verse in this section is this, where it says, with the tongue we bless the Lord and Father, and with it we also curse those who are made in the likeness of God. This ought not to be so, James says. That's very profound and direct. And he also goes on to talk about the fruit of what comes out of us. Can fresh water and brackish water come out of the same spring? Can a fig tree have olives? Those sorts of things. So it's really quite a profound teaching. Clearly, what James is trying to say here is be careful with your speech. It's very powerful. Use it for good and not for harm. So we have the power of our words, and it's true even culturally, not just within Christianity, that we have sayings about watching what we say and how it impacts other people. Some very familiar ones to you would be cultural proverbs. If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. Or sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. Which actually is not true. Words hurt people all the time, every day. But I think the Christian message is this, that we can, in fact, come to that level of maturity and understanding about ourselves and everything else in the world, including other people, so that we can put it in a perspective that it's not doing us damage. What's that personal proverb I use all the time? Hurting people hurt people. Keeping that in mind can put it in perspective of taking that step back. So we have the potential, though, of these poisonous words that can come out of our mouths. And when we do, whenever our speech gets in the way, it's typically directed toward two particular things: people and circumstances. The harmful things that come out of our mouth are directed typically to people and circumstances. So with people, it could be criticism or diminishment or hatred or desire to wound or hurt or payback, revenge, any number of things that we all have experienced and possibly done. However, when that speech becomes positive, it becomes, what comes out of us is encouragement and blessing to other people. And again, when we talk about the circumstances and the things that come out there, if it comes out negatively, it's going to come out typically as complaint about the things going on in our lives. That this isn't going right, this has happened, that person's done this, the whole thing's out of control, I don't have enough money, I don't have enough whatever. And it can become a whole litany, of a nonstop litany of complaints about things in one's life and circumstances. C.S. Lewis, in one of his writings, talked about doing the act of murmuring and eventually a person becoming a murmurer. But that's their identity. They don't know anything else. Yet, positively, when we talk about our circumstances, talk about the good aspects of life, we call that gratitude. Two very different things. Now, this is really imperative. Now, I'm going to say something that you might think is political. I want you to know on the very front, this is not political against anybody, period, okay? But I don't know if you've observed, we've entered into a phase of our social life, and some of us that are older can remember a time that it wasn't quite this way, where public discourse is just, it's just not done, not in any kind of decent way. The way that it's done, where the way issues are worked out in our culture today, is taking the very worst of this, the tongue being a poison and a fire, and burning everything down that doesn't agree with it. And that is really immature. And that is really harmful. And that is really destructive. And that is where we've gotten to in the public square. The mature things, now there are definitely issues that have to be talked about. There are issues that need to be challenged and issues that need to be overcome. But the way we do it makes all the difference. Take in contrast to that kind of public square that we're talking about, think about some people in history and how positive and affirming and encouraging they were, even though they were going against very strong, powerful, and destructive tendencies in human experience. Mahatma Gandhi comes to mind as someone who did that. Martin Luther King. What about William Wilberforce? I hope that's somebody that you know about, because he spent 38 years as a Christian in Parliament in England trying to overcome slavery in the British Empire. He was viciously abused publicly in the media and in Parliament, and always came back with a word of grace. There's a movie about that called Amazing Grace if you want to know more about William Wilberforce. There are others, St.Francis, others, that dealt with really strong tendencies, destructive things in their culture, yet did it with true grace, really amazing grace. And what they did had profound impact in setting people free. So there are ways that can be done that are not destructive, but positive. So the Bible says a lot about this, but it goes deeper. It's not just about the management of our speech. That's a great place to start, but it goes deeper than that. For instance, Jesus says this in Matthew 12, "For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. The good person brings good things out of a good treasure, and the evil person brings evil out of an evil treasure." Pretty black and white. What's in you is what will eventually come out. Now, somebody that's an introvert like me can get away with a lot of silence when in here it's really different. But that's why Jesus always takes it to the interior, to the core, doesn't he? And so it suggests there's more than this language management that we have to be about. We need to be careful with words, but it's more than that. It's more than just carefulness or diligence or social graces, but a purifying of the inner spring within us that brings forth either blessing or poison. So the whole point of all that the Scripture has to say about this particular topic is the outflow is not about outward compliance alone, though, as I'll say again, it's a great place to start. In fact, maybe the only place we can start. But we need to move into an interior transformation. Well, what does that look like, an interior transformation? How do we look like Martin Luther King or William Wilberforce or others? Can we have that kind of level of maturity? Well, it starts with awareness, doesn't it? Of just understanding who we are, where we sit in ourselves and in our world, and understanding other people. Awareness of the condition of things. That is the focus of the Scriptures, to teach us a new perspective. Jesus would say, "You've heard it said this, but I say this." It's a change of perspective that moves us from thought to feelings changing to behaviors changing, from inside out, from awareness to inner transformation to maturity to integrity. And so we need to ask ourselves, what are our words looking like? How are they impacting the people around us? How can our words lovingly challenge and heal and guide and nurture and build up and encourage others to be all that God intends them to be? Well, the answer is a spiritual, emotional, and psychological growth, maturity to develop wisdom and transformation. So simple, just do that, right? Well, how do we do that? Well, it's really taking seriously the Christian message, really hearing it. And it begins often with actually going through the motions. In Alcoholics Anonymous, don't they have a saying, fake it till you make it? There's some real truth in that, of doing a pattern until it actually becomes something that is internalized and then becomes that well and that spring. And that is what the Christian life is. Of allowing all this teaching and all this perspective to take root in our hearts, to germinate there, and then replace those outward actions with something that is truly from the heart and flows out of us. And again, if you've ever known anybody that's like that, it's a really precious, wonderful thing. And so that's somebody you really want to be around. Because the spring of life, the spring of blessing is coming forth from them. That's the aim. That's where we're to move to. Now, I want to say something because I'm coming to closure here at St. Francis and in my ordained ministry, at least active ordained ministry. And so I've put a lot of words out there. In 16 years here, I've put a lot of words out there. So I want to say that if I've ever said anything that has hurt you or harmed you or confused you, well, the first thing to ask is, was it true? Was it simply something in you, in which case I hope you'll understand. But if it's something that I just was plain amiss on, I want to ask your forgiveness. And pray for you and for myself, and for all of us, that we can experience that true transformation of life, so that what bubbles forth from us, from our inner core, is blessing, peace, and life. Paul summed it up this way in Philippians 4. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. If we do that and think about such things, we will be healed, and the world we touch will be healed all around us.